Hello, everyone. Dante and Alice is here for another episode of the Fighting Roundtable. I have quite a few guests for here tonight, so I'll announce them one at a time. Monique Sarah from Unwrapped Sports, a social media director and a part of the combats department. Thank you for coming on.
Oh, thank you guys for reaching out. I'm kind of glad I met a few friends, even though we're going through this whole thing together.
Yep,
So,
absolutely. Yeah, thanks for coming on. And from Slip the Jab podcast, sorry, it's Lino P and Ian Ebbett. Thanks you guys for coming on.
What's going on, Dave? Thanks for having us, buddy.
Oh yeah, absolutely. So,
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
all right, absolutely. Thanks for coming on. So, today I wanted to talk about viewership in the fighting world, more having to do with the power of the audience, power of the people, and how it influences fighter culture. And it's kind of a interesting time to bring it up, considering what things that are going on right now. So I just want to take a minute to reflect on how much it impacts the fighting culture. Uh, and I wanted to talk about I guess, the gladiator mentality. Yeah, nowadays fighters fight just to get the glitz and the glamour and for the money, but it never really was like that in the early years of the UFC. So I wanted to ask, just as a first question, how do you think the audience influence fighter culture from your perspective? Starting with Monique.
oh, sorry.
No, it's okay.
So I guess if you have to define like audience in terms of like there's live audience
Mhm.
that are at events, and then there's audience that's obviously us if we're not able to go to live events. We either go to bars, we either go to places where they have it, or even we just get together as friends to watch it. I think like the live audience is powerful in a sense where like momentum could be swayed because it doesn't even have to do with like home field advantage or anything like that. It's more about like the energy and the vibe, and it's just nothing like you ever experienced before. I don't know if anybody's ever been to a live event, but if you are a huge fan or you want to know really about MMA and how it works, you can go to one and you'll see the pretty much the whole stadium will light up. Sometimes if you go overseas, you'll have like people like cheering for one fighter or another having chance. So I think it is powerful in a sense because that's part of the sport. I think that people don't understand. It's not just like two people in the octagon.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah, I kind of see where you're coming from. Yeah, there's. It reminds me of that meme of the Just Bleed guy, where yeah, I mean, you get so enveloped in the atmosphere of a live performance that you just want to just evoke an emotion out of the fighters. Yeah, and sometimes the fighters respond to it, sometimes they don't. But to know that you have that kind of power when you're in that environment, that's something that is interesting, and you can see how it influences the culture. What do you guys think, Lino and Ian?
E, you want to go first? You want me to go first? What do you want to do?
Take turns, boys.
Yeah.
um, I'll jump in.
All right, go ahead. I'll go last.
It's interesting because Monique, I agree with you as far as the on the spot energy when you go to these events. The cheering you get. If the fight's boring, you can hear the crowd booing because they want action. If you're just feeling each other out, or if you land a punch that looked okay to the audience, that they roar and cheer, and then that in turn influences the judging because they hear that crowd energy
Mhm.
and that dynamic, and it actually kind of weighs in on them, and it probably shouldn't, but let's be real, it does.
Mhm.
But I was thinking more along the lines of how the shift has gone from 1993 to kind of where we're at today,
Mhm.
and the
Big
fact that
shift.
social media and the viewers
Yeah.
there have a major influence. And you see fighters, how we sometimes forget. We all talk about fighters and tweet things or do whatever on social media, but they take these things to heart. They act like they have these tough shells, but they definitely get this feedback, and that in turn affects their actions. So I think social media, uh, the crowd, affects fighter behavior more than anything else.
Mm. Lino, anything to add?
Yeah, I mean, excuse me. If you want to see how much the audience and the fans affect the fighters, just look at someone like Kobe. I mean, he
Mm.
literally turned into a completely different person, right? I mean, there was a time there recently, and maybe even now, where everybody was trying to be Connor. Why they want to be Connor? Because Connor's fun, Connor's charismatic. Everybody loves Connor, so they're trying to be like him. And you did make an awesome point about how it wasn't like that back in the day. You had fighters that were fighting for just the love of fighting, but now they see that there's money to be made in it. They see that's possible, and the way to get money is to climb the ranks, get better fights, and the way you do that is having people be into you for one way or another, whether it's Triple C doing his thing, love it or hate it. Your eyes are on it. It's great marketing. He knows what he's doing. Either you're gonna say he's the king of cringe and I don't like him, but you're still looking at his tweets. You're still gonna watch his videos. So I think that has a lot to do. I wish we actually knew how much. Like, is it 50% it affects the fighters? Is it 90% that it affects the fighters? But it does for sure.
Right. Okay. Yeah, and that aspect of it, it not only affects it also affects the fighter's performance. Yeah, you hear this phrase a lot. They couldn't perform under the limelight, or when the lights go on, will they be able to bring what they have in the gym into the octagon? And the reason why they say that is because the audience has influence on whether they can perform, whether it's nerves or they get too much influence, is that they just lose themselves, and they lose the plan that they came in the octagon with. So that's one thing that I wanted to see, that whether or not that will change with the absence of the audience nowadays.
Yeah, I was gonna. Oh, sorry. You can go
first.
Ahead. Oh,
Go ahead.
I was gonna say, like, because you guys brought up the point of social media and how it's different. You brought up Connor, you brought up Kobe, you brought up Triple C. I honestly think, like, with Connor, it's like he uses the audience's like responses to help him. In my opinion, kind of like he uses that, and he's like the best self marketer I've ever seen. I think in the UFC for sure. Like, regardless of the personal stuff, he definitely just kind of like uses everybody's energy, like, love it or hate it. He uses that, and he definitely uses that in his I guess mental warfare game, because I think he has probably one of the strongest minds. There's not many people, in my opinion, that like it's super mentally there. Like, I thought Jose Aldo was gonna be, but Jose Aldo looks stiff, against Conor McGregor. So that was one of those times where it made me think about fighters' mental game and how important it could be. So I think viewership does play a factor. You guys are totally right about social media. Marketing people are looking at you. They're saying they hate you. They're saying that they love you. They're saying that you're weird, and it's definitely helping their case, because people are probably going to watch whether they're cheering for them or booing them. And at the same time, it's also like the mental warfare game. I don't know many fighters that have like that mental game as good as Connor. That is probably my favorite part about him.
You know something, Monique? This isn't to disagree with you, because I agree 100% that Connor is one of the most mentally strong people in the octagon. I wish he was as mentally strong outside of the octagon. What happened with the old guy at the bar? For him being as mentally strong in the octagon as he is, you would think he'd be able to have somebody put his whiskey down or say, "I don't want a shot of your whiskey," and be able to just to take it in stride and say, okay. But he does these things where he acts differently outside, which is odd. But I don't know. It just made me think of it. Just made me think of that.
You're totally right. I think that certain people, I don't know how to explain this in the most proper way, but certain people need to be a certain way to get themselves in the fight game, at least according to what I can see from certain fighters. But then, like, when they're not in the octagon, they're not training, they might be a totally different person. And you're totally right about the whole mental warfare thing when it comes to Connor outside. I have no idea
And it could
Honestly,
be.
what
I
his
mean,
problem is.
yeah, and it could. I mean, it could be drugs and alcohol. That I mean, we see what happened with John Jones right now. So I mean, it could be that changes someone too. I don't know if anybody here knows people in their personal life that when they drink, they turn into a totally different person. If you
Right.
could
I
turn
did.
into a yeah, and you can turn into like a better person. Like
Okay.
maybe you have someone that gets really happy when they drink,
Mhm.
but then you have that one friend where they drink and they just that's it. They get angry, they want to fight. So you have that. But Dave, sorry if like I misunderstood the question because I think I understand what you're saying. Now you're saying their performance, not
Right.
not as much how they act. Well, I mean, obviously, if I would think, and Ian, you might even know this better, but they might lose they might go in there with a game plan, but when the fans start booing, maybe that gives them incentive to just put the game plan to the side and just start swinging for the fences.
Right.
You think so, E?
Well, I think just to mention Connor, I think he's one of the very, very few people that high energy and that crowd boosts his performance.
I totally agree.
I don't think there's many that are like that. All of them say they are, but they're not because really we have this, inner desire to please people and to be liked. So whether you're a fighter or not,
Sure.
human
Yeah.
nature is we want to be liked and accepted by people. So those people are fighters, but they also have that other human nature part to them that can't just get turned on and off most of the time. So, I tell people, think of it as this. You have a speech to give. If somebody said to you, hey, in 15 minutes, I need you to give a speech on whatever. I'm just throwing this right at you. You have 10 minutes maybe to prepare. And if I said, you're going to do this with your significant other or your best friend in a room, you would do this and it would be very comfortable. But if I
Right.
said, you're going to go in front of 19,000 people with a light on you and do this, how does that affect your performance? It dramatically does. Because you're going to be, I know how to public speak just fine. But now you just gave me 19,000 people to stare at me to do my job. Suddenly, I'm choking a little bit. I'm sweating. I'm not going to perform my best. So same thing. They fight, like you mentioned, in the gym. You want to perform as you do in the gym in your fight. Because of the gym, you're just there to hone your skills and work on things, and there's a pretty big comfort zone there. But now you got an audience and cheering and lights and all this. Now you got to worry about doing what you need to do and what you perform at the gym. But now with this need to not embarrass yourself is another layer added on to your fighting skills, to not disappoint people, friends, family, spectators. People bought your tickets. This is how you make money. Now you got to think about if you do poor, how that affects your long-term financial stability. So now you have all these other added weights that weren't there a few minutes ago when you're at the gym. But now it's go time. They are. So it is a huge, huge pressure and a huge difference.
So, that said, do you think that they would fight better now? Like, do you
Yeah.
think you do? Okay.
I absolutely do, with maybe the exception of a very few. And Conor McGregor would be one of those few.
Got you.
Okay.
Got you.
Now, do you think that live streaming would have an impact on how fighters perform? Because the physical aspect is pretty apparent, but I may have seen this in MMA fights on YouTube, because there was like one French channel that had MMA fights, and other boxing channels, like that YouTube fight with Logan Paul and KSI.
Yes.
Yeah, but having a live stream audience, may change the dynamic a bit, where you may not be able to see them, but they can see you, and there's plenty of them around the world. So does it decrease the cathartic feeling of like pleasing the fans?
Who wants to go first?
Oh no, you mean in like because they're not there physically? Is that what you mean? Okay, got you. No, go ahead. Go ahead, Monique.
Oh, Ian, did you want to say something?
Out of sight, out of mind.
Right.
All right,
I think there's different perspectives. So like, there's one perspective that Ian mentioned, and I think that there's another one where it's kind of like it's still a mental thing because people might be watching you.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if that makes sense
Right.
or not, but even though they're
Yeah,
not physically there, it's definitely a mental game. So I think it changes a little bit, but it's still like at the back of a fighter's head, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
I
Yeah,
agree.
you still know.
Yeah.
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 I agree because I mean, think about it. I don't know if you're like this, but I know even when we do the podcast now, it's getting a lot easier. But they're not even listening live. But when we podcast, like especially during the beginning, I would even get a little nervous knowing that someone else is just going to hear this. They weren't even hearing it live, so I think they don't have to be there for you to be nervous. I mean, because in the back of your mind, yeah, millions of people are watching this. Like this, millions of people are gonna see this, so it's gonna make you nervous.
Right.
Oh, I definitely agree with you guys. I just think there's layers to it. So it's sort of nobody's watching. There's a comfort level. Nobody's right around me that I could see watching, but I know millions are watching. That's added pressure. And then there's people are watching, streaming, and people are there in person is the highest level.
Yeah,
so,
I agree. I agree with that. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Same.
Yeah. All right. And now I want to go to, I guess, a section where there might be a little bit more of a gray area. It's like the gladiator mentality versus the monk mentality. And we kind of talked about it a little bit. The gladiator mentality does it for just entertains. But as for the monk, it's all about preserving the fighting style. He practices the fighting style because of what it represents and what it means to do it just by practicing it. So regardless of what the viewers say during the match, before the match, after the match, whether you might have fans or not, your dedication to your art is high priority as a monk. And you see fighters like that. Habib is one of them.
I'm Team Khabib.
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, when you see this, do you think it will cause a shift in a shift in the dynamics of the fighter mindset, where you'll see all these fighters become more of a monk fighter than a gladiator?
Yeah, I guess I'll go first just because I when you like brought up that question, I was like, oh, I got a really good example where, okay, we're gonna go back to Connor. Like, it's just been brought
All
up,
roads
and
lead back to Connor.
the only reason
It feels like that, right?
Right, and it kind of makes sense because Connor, if you guys either watched his documentary or you watched anything about his earlier life, like he was all about becoming a fighter with like the poor conditions and whatever that he had to live with.
Mm-hmm.
He still went and he became, a double champion. And then after that, the whole fame, the gladiator, Dane just said, just kind of like overshadowed. And I really think that he, at one point, I don't know how many years, guys. It's been 3 years since we saw him fight, and then we finally saw him fight recently. And so I don't know, because I think money kind of changes a lot of things in people.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's my point, is that with him, he got so many opportunities. He had the money. It could be his mental game as well, where he thinks so. But I think it changes it. John Jones, similar, not as much as Connor, but I think that it does change a lot of things, and it depends on the person, right? Because then you have someone like Khabib,
It depends
right?
on the person.
Yeah.
Right.
All right. Yeah, and since this is the fighting roundtable, I want to encompass all types of combat sports, including non-striking sports like wrestling or Muay Thai. In wrestling, there's not much of an audience. There's audiences there, like people who are supporting the wrestlers. But
and what kind of wrestling are you talking about?
like Greco-Roman, freestyle,
Okay.
like college wrestling.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, because since it's more of a grind, not a lot of money that goes into it, but people go into it because they respect the craft, they respect the art. And so with fighters like that have that kind of mentality and come from that background, you'll see of them have a little bit of a monk mentality, Chael Sonnen not included. But
Uncle
so
Chael.
yeah, do you think this is I guess a case by case basis where it depends on the type of style you come from or what kind of person is attracted to that kind of sport?
Well, I think almost all people from different combat backgrounds, I think they all start into that with this. I want to learn this skill, and then once you learn this skill and you love whatever art of combat you're in, then the next logical step is, all right, now how do I test myself to see if I'm worth my salt? So whether that's, you know, I go compete and to see if the skills I like and I've learned stack up to other people. So that's that competitive nature and then that internal question. And I think most people have that. And then when you talk about mixed martial arts in particular, now the other mindset is, all right, does my art or my background stack up against other arts and other forms and other formulas that you put into all of your style? So I think most people have that original trajectory. And then you mentioned that the college wrestling and why it's still like that. And I think you answered the same question in your statement, the fact that there is no money involved there. Right. You go there, your goal is to go from elementary school wrestling to the Olympics. And that's, even that whole route doesn't get you money. It is just for the sport and the competitive nature of seeing who the best of the best is. So fighters, once you enter from amateur to professional, we all saw the formula. It's been cast in stone at this point that the louder you are, the more attention you draw, the more antics you do inside, outside, walking in your public life. That's how you make money, because fighters, compared to baseball, basketball, they make nothing. They make chump change in comparison. So you really got to step up all these other parts, whether you like it or not. This is your livelihood, and if you want to do this as a career, you have to turn into Chael. Chael wasn't like that during his,
especially nowadays,
early his Oregon days and whatnot. But he knew how to play the game. It's like, all right, I got to turn myself into a pro wrestler and do some poetry and some funny stuff, because people are drawn to personalities, not skills, in the way of who's paying me. Right. So you have to have both parts to your game if you want to make it that level. And when you talk about the marquee names and who the casual fans are, if I asked my 70-plus-year-old mother, hey, do you know these fighters? She's not going to know most of them. She doesn't follow fighting. But if I mentioned Conor McGregor,
a household name,
I know that name. Why? Because he's made sure everybody knows. And like you said, Lino, he made sure to be a household name. And some of the other people, so she'll say, oh, I know 4 fighters. And they're the top people that make sure they saturate the market in good or bad ways everywhere to get their money and to get their name out there. So, sorry for being long-winded.
That's okay.
Oh yeah, very much okay. Yeah, yeah, and I think it kind of it was kind of I was going to make a follow up to whether can MMA or fighting for that matter continue without an audience, kind of like the way the art of debating, just as a comparison. Presidential debates before the television was invented, it changed the whole dynamic of how presidential candidates can appeal to an audience.
Absolutely.
100%.
Now, with or without viewership, and I guess you can include radio into that, can the combat sports, learning a discipline and testing yourself, can it live on without viewership?
So I'll go first and say, like, eventually,
Yeah.
like, I don't think it will, because that's the whole point in terms of, like, going pro, right? And, like, going into a big promotion like UFC, Bellator 1, and then other disciplines as well. It's kind of like, in a way, how you make your money or how you gain interest, and like, that's how you survive. It's a business.
Right.
At the end of the day, like, in terms of just training, that's a totally different thing. Fighters can fight without an audience, that's fine, but there's certain fighters, like we just mentioned, big household names, like they kind of, you know, rely on having their face everywhere in the news and the media and all that. So I think eventually I don't think it can survive, just because for me it doesn't make sense as a business, in a business way, where you're here to provide like entertainment in the most pro of combat sports. And how are you going to, like, you know, kind of provide for yourself? You're just gonna have to, like Dana White, I don't know what he's gonna do with the whole Khabib and Tony fight. Cross my fingers, because it's been 4 years. Like, and I actually bought a ticket to that, so that's why I've been really rooting for it. You know, like, how is he gonna make any profits from that? People are probably gonna buy the pay-per-view for that one. That's a really big one. But that's still viewership, right? Yeah. At the end of the day. So eventually, I don't think it would survive if there's absolutely like no viewership whatsoever.
Unless, of course, they do things behind closed doors, which it was kind of
right.
That was proposed last time. Like, it becomes something like something like underground, where instead of being underground and no one knows about it, it's just closed. Yes, it's just closed doors, and like sponsorships can get in on the action, so fighters can get paid. So
that's right, yeah.
Yeah, something like that. But yeah, that's basically where it's going with. Yeah, to tackle the social media aspect of it for a little bit. Yeah, you can get a
1 second. Can I put my input on that one?
Oh, sure.
Okay. I think it will survive. And like I know I'll be watching. I'll still pay.
Yeah.
You know, if they put cards on, I'm still going to pay for my ESPN. If you told me there's never going to be any fans and they're going to do it like tough now, say that's the way they're going to do it from now on. Okay, they're just going to have their corners, a couple cameramen, and that's it. But they're still going to stream it every Saturday. I'm not going to cancel my subscription. I'm not going to stop ordering the pay-per-views. And I think that you have to remember in business, because like you were saying, it is a business, you adapt and you adjust. I mean, look at the music industry. Yeah. Okay, when streaming started coming along and people were able to, you know, steal music and all that, everybody was saying that's it. It's a wrap. But next thing you know, they pivot and they find another way to make money out of it, whether it's, you know, different ways with their touring or merch, or Spotify comes around, so now they got a way to do it with that. But it would survive. Would it be? Another thing is, I don't know how big of a deal the gate is. I mean, I've heard rumors that they actually don't make that much on the gate, but I don't know if that's true. I heard that from what are those guys called? Shout out to MMA On Point. They make some good videos, and they were making like a really good argument one time about how they should actually stream more instead of having the live events. And I
was gonna say that actually was gonna be in my head right now.
Yeah, there were some. They were saying, you know, you have now that the UFC has its own place to put on the fights, like have it there, and it would solve a lot of problems. And how they dug into the financials, and the gates really, it's not that big a deal. Like, I know they say they make millions, but you have to see what you're netting in business. Right. You know what I mean? Just because
you profiting, gross, are you profiting or not?
So it's basically like impromptu evolution.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, you know, listen, if the fans are there, it's going to survive. You're going to pay to see it. Just like Tony Khabib. There's some people saying that Tony Khabib is not, you know, that it's not, who was it? Brendan Schaub said that nobody's going to buy the pay-per-view. No one's going to buy the pay-per-view because everyone's hurting for money right now. That pay-per-view, that pay-per-view.
Those numbers are going to be off the chart.
Smash.
Yeah.
Smash.
They might even make more money buying pay-per-view than getting to it live on person.
Yeah, they might even do better now, since Uncle Dana wants this to be the sport that everyone has eyes on and be the first back. I mean, he knows what he's doing. He knows what he's doing. He's a good businessman. So that's my thoughts on that.
Okay. Yeah, you know, I agree with Lino in terms of like, for me, I think big picture in terms of like they want to make like profits, and there's obviously a bunch of people that love going to the live events. Even like, right? So like you might lose that, like, because some people prefer going to live events versus streaming. I don't know. There's definitely a market like that. So obviously, if he's gonna do something like that, like what you said, pivot, adapt, you know, be innovative in a way, then he might have to expect that he's not gonna get the same numbers.
Yeah. See, I'm a little
Right.
different because I'm actually one of the few that doesn't like going to the live events.
Oh.
I prefer to, be at my house, hear Rogan, see it on my TV up close, pay attention. You know what I mean? Like a lot of times when I go to live events, be it any sport, I'm kind of into the atmosphere. I'm into everything else that's going on around me.
Right,
So I'm
right.
not paying as much attention. So that's kind of,
I guess that
that's
makes
just me.
sense. That
It
makes
is.
sense. Like you're more analytical. I don't know if Ian was gonna
It is.
say anything.
It is.
Yeah.
It is kind of apples and oranges from going to one and then watching it on a television, say, because
Yeah.
you do get so many angles on your television. You get the commentary to go with it. You could stop it, rewind it, whatnot. A live event, all the energy's there, and you get to
That's
see
another
people
thing.
in
Stop and
person.
rewind. Right. Yeah. You can
You
do
get to
stuff like that.
you get to tell people, hey, guess where I went? I was there for that fight. So that's the part that adds it into your memory. So people do both for two different reasons. So it's difficult to put them in the same category.
Yeah, I agree. There's certain people, like, it's based on their personality, too, because some people I know that are very introverted and they prefer, just staying at home, analyzing the fights per round, and making their predictions, making their summaries. And then when you go to the event, you're kind of just like, you're there to have an amazing experience. So there's two different experiences, right?
Yeah.
Very much.
Yeah, when I go to a baseball game, I don't like watching baseball, but I like going to a baseball game in the summer, and having a cold beer and having a
Yes.
hot dog and enjoying the sun, and somebody hits a home run and you go crazy. But I'm not like really into that baseball game. Like I'm,
You should come to Toronto. I literally work with the Blue Jays, too.
Are you
so-
really? Are you
Yeah,
from
I work-
Toronto? I have
I
family. There's
am,
a lot of
I am.
Italians up in Toronto.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
for sure. Yeah, so like I understand like Lino's point. Like he's actually there for like the experience of everything versus like because he's not watching an actual baseball game
Yeah,
at home.
half
Like
paying attention. Half the time I'm like, just talking to the person I'm there with and just kind of enjoying the ambiance.
guys, it's the best first date like experience because you're just talking to someone and then waiting for something to happen.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that's an interesting aspect to explore. Yeah, when it comes to viewership, is there something specific with the audience where they enjoy it for themselves and not actually for the fight? Yeah, that's why they have these I guess you can call them memes, but these lasting chants that you hear in the audience while they see fights, like from Ric Flair's "Woo" when they sing the "Ole Ole Ole Ole." In
Oh, yeah.
yeah. It's whether you're enjoying in Schadenfreude, like enjoying like the anguish of another person or another audience members feeling towards the defeat of a fighter they like, or if it's just like joining in and like experiencing this as one. Do you think that will be lost if we switch from physical audiences to streaming? From my perspective,
it has
That's
to,
a
right?
good answer. That's a good answer.
I
Anyways,
mean, it has to, right? I mean, how's it possible? Unless I misunderstand the question, but if there's no audience there, how's that?
I
how are you
think
gonna be able to
like
have
first
that?
I don't know if I'm getting this right, Greg. If you correct me,
That's
if you
what
can,
I'm worried
okay?
about.
I kind of like
Monique.
whip
This
the question,
is-
so it's
This
easy,
is
Mike.
how I think of it. Like when there's all these different aspects of both experiences or the live experience that we're missing, is that going to change like the whole like, oh, we're watching this as one? Like I don't know, because of social media, like how you guys both brought up, like everybody's so connected.
Yeah.
People can watch together. They can watch like FaceTiming. I don't know. Like there's so many different ways to stay connected in that way where you can experience it together. And obviously we have MMA Twitter for that.
Yeah.
So, and there's a lot of people that are very vocal on that, especially after each round or if something happens. So I feel like, I don't think it's going to be lost. I think it's going to be a different way of connecting, if that makes sense. Did I get that right? I don't know if I got the question
you
right.
did.
Okay.
Yeah, I had a different perspective on it because I don't know if any of you watch esports.
Yes.
Yeah, I watch League of Legends, and the Twitch chat for the League of Legends esports are they're notorious to say the least. Yeah, this is why Mark Merrill and Brandon Beck, they really capitalized on the Twitch deal to stream all of their esports live on there because of how they can reach audiences from around the world to watch their events. And you can see how the Twitch chat evolved each time, even with Twitch specific memes like the Joel Skype memes, having the take my energy when they're trying to cheer on an underdog team that's facing like a well-known, like multiple-time world champion esports team. Yeah, and you can see maybe some of that will, as we're going to live streaming in light of recent events, you can see some of it pour in now. And I think you'll see a little bit of that if Dana White tries to go that route with signing up with Twitch, as Brandon Beck and Mark Merrill has. I would like to see how MMA Twitter would be on Twitch. But yeah, I think,
that's not gonna be good. No offense to everybody, I love you all, but everybody has their own opinion. I'm very I'm in the background. You know what I mean? Like I'm kind of like I'm neutral. I'm trying to not be biased, but like I think Lino's like, yeah, you know exactly what I'm talking about, right?
I do.
Yeah, but yeah, that's basically my opinion on it. That maybe it won't be the same, but I think it'll just have the same the same vigor.
I got your question now. I misunderstood it before. I understand. You're saying if you have a group, say I invite over 6 to 8 people over my house, are we still going to be cheering and doing the ole, ole? Is that what you mean?
Yeah,
like, there's no audience?
Will the feeling be different?
Or no fans, I should say, not audience. Audience could be viewers and all that. You mean if there's no fans in the arena, would we still do that? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, it's like will the feeling be the same?
Is there alcohol involved?
Right.
Ooh, that's a good question.
Now, is there any sort of substances involved? Because if there's alcohol, it changes everything.
Oh yeah, definitely.
It changes everything.
We just like brought it back up to alcohol. Anyways.
All roads lead back to Connor and alcohol.
Proper 12, guys. I'm literally staring at my Proper 12 bottle right now.
Proper number 12.
Yeah.
It's a basic whiskey. I don't give a care about what anybody says. I'm a huge Scotch and whiskey person. That is a very basic whiskey when it comes to the Irish whiskeys. That's all I have to say. Everybody can pour in. Greg, if anybody gives you like a lot of hate for that, give it to me.
We'll do.
Yeah. It's interesting as far as things are going to be different because we are losing live human energy. So, but the MMA fans aren't going anywhere. Because they love MMA, so they'll take it any way they could get it. If it's streaming this, but missing out on some of that energy that kind of goes through the TV or you're there in person, it's gonna be missed. It's not gonna make the sport go down or take down anything to that magnitude. It'll just be, it'll be a little sad that some of those things aren't there. But everybody will adapt, and we'll just have bigger house parties and bigger.
That's right.
As far as that, we'll bring our own audience to where we're at to make up for that atmosphere being missed. That's how it'll change.
I think we even said it last episode when we were talking about Kevin Lee. And we were saying,
no, you guys should have had me on that episode. I'm sorry. I got a lot of things to say about that.
maybe we'll do it over. We'll do another one.
We'll do it.
Guys, like this is the thing, right? I'm not going to be biased or anything, but certain things you have to be accountable for when you're a fighter who wants to be like this best. Like, Kevin Lee is like the perfect example of somebody who wants to desperately be like Conor McGregor.
Yeah, he's getting better with it, but man, there was a time there where it was getting pretty bad when he was starting to dress different and all that. Right.
Sorry, I didn't mean to like sidetrack.
No, it's totally fine. I was just gonna say on the last episode when we were saying the Kevin Lee fight, we were saying, okay, here we go. So we had a fight. There was no fans there. How do we feel about it? And we were saying, for a second there, like we didn't even notice. Like we were so into it, but we ended. I think tell me if I'm wrong. But like we ended with ultimately, is it better with people? A big crowd in the arena? Yes, it is. Do we prefer it like that? Yes, we do. But we'll take it how we can get it.
I think it depends because here's the thing. I'm coming from the perspective of somebody who goes to the live events, and sometimes sometimes one part of what one part of the audience does will kind of like annoy me, if that makes
How
sense.
so? How so, Monique?
I'm trying to think. Like,
Just like an example.
the latest one that I've been to was UFC London 2 years ago. Jorge Masvidal there until I have a few friends over in London. Yeah, right.
That's
Okay, so I had to like really sum it up. There were just a few fans that were obviously like just shouting out a lot of provocative terms really loud. I'm like, yeah, because I was literally not the front row, but like you know where the chairs are. I'm
Yeah.
right behind the chairs. I'm right behind the chairs. Didn't get the chairs because I'm really short, guys, and I wouldn't be able to see if somebody like just stood up. So like I was right there and I was excited. There was a bunch of people. Obviously, there's some people that are drunk, throwing drinks, and you know, there's definitely that part of it where some people might not see, and I think that's not going to be missed. Like for me personally. But I agree with both of you, all of you, in a sense where when you say there is something missing, but is it a big thing? I don't think so. You know, like I think we can adapt to it. I don't think, like, you know what I mean? Like people might say like I miss it, but then they might adapt to the streaming. They might adapt to whatever Dana White has up his sleeves.
Mm-hmm.
Don't know. It's just in different times now too, right? So you never know.
I agree.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah, I really like how this conversation is going. Now to wrap
I'm
up-
having fun.
Yeah, it's great.
Me too.
Now just to wrap things up with this final question about you see how fighters are inspired by being an audience member and then finally actually doing it. Israel Adesanya is a recent example where he said it was in Sydney, I believe he was part of the Sydney audience, and then when he watched his first event, watching Anderson Silva, that inspired him to become a UFC fighter, and now he's the middleweight champion of the world. So just to leave that off, whether you're just you're not even part of the audience, but you hear about a fight of a combat sport and you want to engage in it, or you're an audience member and you see it happening live and you want to be a part of it. What do you think would be the driving point? What would be the spark that would ignite you to become a fighter from just being an audience member to being someone that will be watched by the audience?
Oh, that's a good question. I mean, it depends because like there's a lot of factors. I feel like it's a case by case because everybody's a little different, right, in terms of how they're made and what drives them. People like I'll give my example is like I'm really passionate about not just MMA but sports in general. That's why I've made my life like. You know, pretty much everything that I work with is something that I really love and I'm passionate about. So maybe for me, that the passion there, and like for me, seeing something happen, like a knockout, a submission, something like that, might get me going. Because for me, it's so easy, but maybe for other people, it's something else, right? So I don't know if that makes sense or not, but that's my answer.
As an addendum to that, people will have an opposite reaction when watching a knockout. It will be either knockout live, or I don't want to be anywhere part of that, but I want to be a part of that. But maybe being there physically, maybe it just heightens the need to either repel or just be a part of the fighting culture. What do you guys think?
I think
want to go first because you actually, I mean, you've already competed, so I mean, I'm curious to see what you're going to say first.
Well, I think, I mean, when you talk about combat sport, I think it's a little different than some of the other sports. So when you're a fan of one and you see it, and then you're like, oh, maybe I want to do that.
Learn how to kick a field goal.
Yeah, like
Hey, guys, I
it's
wanna
like
be a
versus get kicked
quarterback.
in the face.
it's sort of like, well, baseball. It's like, oh, I like this atmosphere. People are cheering, and I want to have that feeling that people are buying my jersey and looking up to me and getting my autograph. So then I'll do that. But for combat sports, that's not enough. You sort of have to have that desire and want to do that because there's consequences, not just in the actual fight, but every single day to train and lead up to that, you're brutalizing your body or getting hit. So if that's not in your nature, it's just not worth it. You're not going to just say, I want to get that fame and glory that they have, but then you got to glove up and share your blood, sweat, and tears every day and get pounded and sore and ice your joints and all that stuff. So I think you have to have a different desire, and then you already got to be on your way before you hit that point.
Right.
Yeah.
You're not just going to start that and not have a desire to fight.
Yeah.
And get hit and choked and slammed and brutalized. It's not an easy road. So
I was gonna, I'll piggyback off that. I was gonna say 100% passion, right? That's what you need. Passion. Okay, you have to be passionate, and you have to be passionate enough to get punched in the face because, like Ian said, it's not a baseball or it's not an instrument. Okay, say you think you want to create music. You know, it's fun and you want to try it out and try it, but there's no serious risks involved. But I look at it from the other sense too of I think maybe that's why I'm such a big fan of combat sports, because, you know, it's something that like I'm not willing to do. You know, like, it's something that I can't do. Almost like looking at the Sistine Chapel or something, like a beautiful piece of art and saying, wow, like how did they do that? Like I don't even understand. Like I could never do that. So you're even more fascinated with it. And I think that might have a little bit to do with why I'm, you know, so fascinated with combat sports and stuff like that. And about the knockouts, I'm the type of person where I like knockouts in the cage and in the ring, but I don't like knockouts. Like I'm not the type of person where I'll go on YouTube and watch those street fight knockouts.
The street fights, yeah.
They make me, I don't know why. I mean, I can watch Zhang Wei Li versus Joanna Jędrzejczyk kill each other. But if I see somebody get knocked out, for some reason in like a street fight, I don't know why, it gives me the butterflies in my stomach.
Yeah, I want to piggyback to Lino and both Ian and Lino's point.
Well,
everybody made really good. Let's piggyback off each other.
Yeah.
You guys brought up so many good points, and you brought up passion, and Ian brought up that whole like you need a separate drive or a separate desire. I think it's like a hunger, because I think many people I've seen want to do it, especially at this day and age. But it may be their personality. They know they have to work hard. They know they have to discipline themselves. It's more than just, I think, the desire, because like certain people, like they won't, like, for some reason, they're not built to like discipline themselves to do this every single day kind of thing. It's kind of like a self-motivation, which is like piggybacking off of both of your points. And it's also like about like, hey, are you able to discipline yourself? Some people need like resources. Like some people need other people to just, you know, that support system. A lot of people don't have that want to do this sport. And a lot of them probably just think to themselves, you know, this was the most constant thing in my life. You know, like fighting other people was the most constant thing in my life. Like Lino said, you can't watch other people get hit because I feel like it's not hyped. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like you're hyped when you're gonna be like months and months and months, Joanna versus Whaley, you know, Yoel versus Izzy, whoever, right? Yeah. And I think that's the difference for it. And I think that when it comes to wanting to do the sport, it's just more than just the passion and desire. You have to literally challenge yourself and be like, are you gonna be able to get out of your comfort zone? Like I've just said that to so many people because I feel like I have the drive, but even though I don't want to be an MMA superstar, but I have the drive to do what I want, and it's hard, but nothing's going to stop you. Like, that's the thing. You have to have that same mentality.
Yeah, it's so funny you said that because I lived that. When I was training in boxing, like amateur boxing, whenever I finally quit, it's when things it became something where it was like, okay, we're, you know, training every day, but it wasn't that serious. Then when it became serious where it was like I had to dedicate all my time to it for real, that's when I quit. And obviously that's because of passion. But exactly. But I have other things in my life where I work 24/7. I mean, that's all I dedicate my time to. So yeah, you made a great point.
I think if people think this because this is what they want, and like people like, oh yeah, it's not going to be easy. And I'm sure Ian, having competed, might attest to that. There's going to be really dark times. Are you strong enough to pull yourself out of it? Do you need other people in your life to help you pull yourself out of it? Like people think that they can do this by themselves, but some people can't, and that's just the brutal truth. And I don't really like have any excuse when it comes to this kind of topic. Because if you're gonna do it, you're gonna dedicate your time, and you're gonna realize that you're gonna have to sacrifice. You're gonna realize that you're gonna have to go out of your comfort zone. You're gonna realize you're gonna have to deal with a lot of things that you probably haven't in your life dealt with, and the question is, at the end of the day, how bad do you really want it?
Yeah. To answer your question, Dave, money. It would probably take a lot of money. You know what I mean? I mean, let's get real here. You'd probably have to sign a big check for me to get in there, with these monsters. Money. That's the answer. A lot of it.
Right.
And just to clarify, I've only competed in like some jiu-jitsu submission grappling tournaments, and I train MMA and martial arts, but I haven't competed in those.
But you still competed in jiu-jitsu?
Yeah.
That's combat sports. That's what we're talking about, right? We weren't
sure.
just talking about MMA.
Mhm.
Yeah. Ian, don't downplay yourself all the time. You do this all the time.
Yeah, Ian, don't downplay yourself.
Yeah.
He's so humble. That's why I love him. He's like the most humble guy ever. Yeah.
All right, and
He's a
well-
killer. Don't listen to him. He's a killer.
And with that, I'll adjourn this meeting of the Fighting Roundtable. Thank you very much, everyone, for coming in. Monique, Sarah, guys from the Slip the Jab podcast, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Nope.
Yeah,
Thank you very much for having me. I appreciate it.
Yeah.
So,
me too.
so just one more time, how can people reach you?
Go ahead,
Okay.
Monique. Ladies
Oh.
first.
Thank you. So if you guys have Twitter, my handle is Monique. Yep, just like my full name. And if you have Instagram, it's FanFatel88. If you want to check out my sports networks, you can check out on Twitter at Unwrapped Sports. Same thing with Instagram. And also the combat department, since we're talking about MMA, you can reach us at Twitter at Combat Unwrapped and give us a shout out. And we'll definitely answer your questions when it comes to MMA sports. And I'm so glad I met you guys.
Same here.
Likewise,
Same here. This
likewise.
was a lot of fun.
Ah,
Yes,
glad
we'll have to
one.
convene again.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Ours. Oh, sorry. You're trying to you bring us in, dude. All professional. I'm taking us off. Yeah. So we have our website is slipthejabpodcast.com, but the way that we've interacted with everyone and really got the podcast out there is on Twitter. That's where we spend most of our time, and it's at slipthejabpod. And then my personal handle is Lino. I think it's Lino, host of Slip the Jab podcast, but it's at Lino P412.
Got it.
Yeah.
Okay.
And Ian, you know yours, right?
What is mine again?
I knew
It's
it.
your name.
Okay.
It's your name.
Yeah.
My name, Ian
Right.
Evans.
It's at Ian Evitt. At
At
Ian
Ian
Evitt.
Evans.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, everyone, thank you very much for joining me with the Fighting Roundtable. I hope you have a nice day. Have a good one.
All right. See you guys. Thanks.
See you guys.